I'm currently focusing the show on the breakdown and restoration of the American dream, and today I'll be joined by Van Jones, co-founder and president of Rebuild the Dream. Let me just give you a couple of numbers. Over the past 40 years, 35% of all income gains went to the richest 1% of Americans. 35% of all income gains over the last 40 years went to the richest 1%. From 79 to 2006, the top 1% received 36% of all gains in household income, even after taking into account health insurance, federal taxes, government benefits. Between 2001 and 2006, it got worse. 53% of income gains went to the top 1%. Between 79 and 2005, the top 0.1%, that's 1 out of 1,000 households, received over 20%. That's from 79 to 2005, 16 years, 1 out of 1,000 households in America received 1/5 of all after-tax income gains. The bottom 60% received 13.5%. You can think the worst of banana republics here. That means that the top 300,000 people got 1.5 times the total income growth of the bottom 180 million. The housing and financial gimmick bubble burst, tossed us into the current ongoing crisis. In keeping with the new normal, the banks and Wall Street got saved. The people in Main Street are left, for the most part, to fend for themselves. Now the big corporations are sitting on trillions of dollars of cash, hesitant to invest or hire because the middle class that actually drives the economy are worried about their house, their job, their kids, their future. In a September 2010 ABC News Yahoo poll, only half of Americans agreed that, quote, the American dream, that if you work hard, you'll get ahead, still holds true. More than 4 in 10 said it no longer did. Introducing the American Dream movement, Van Jones said, we need a movement dedicated to renewing the idea that hard work pays in our country, that you can make it if you try, that America remains a land committed to dignity, justice, and opportunity for all. And he believes that this is on the chopping block, especially in the eyes of the GOP, and we must rescue it now or risk losing it forever. Van Jones, co-founder and president of Rebuild the Dream, and a co-founder of 3 other successful nonprofit organizations, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, Color of Change, and Green for All. He served as a Green Jobs Advisor in the Obama White House in 2009, and he's a distinguished visiting fellow at both the Center for, no, you're no longer there, but you are at the Center for American Progress, mm-hmm. And you are, as I said, author of The Green Collar Economy. Van, good to see you again.
glad to be here, sir.
It's been a long time this time.
Yeah, I had a great time at Princeton. I taught at Princeton University last year. That's what you were getting hung up on.
That's right. I had it stuck in the bio.
Yeah, but it's fine. I had a great time there. I spent about a year teaching, and one of the things that struck me, and one of the reasons I'm so glad to be here with you, the young people that I was honored to work with, I realized something about them as we were getting through the coursework. If you are a young person in America and you are, for whatever reason, a right-winger, you're a libertarian, you read Ayn Rand, you have a movement to join, you have a cause to celebrate, you have a place to go. It's called the Tea Party. I thought to myself, what if you're a progressive and you're concerned about the economy? You're concerned about jobs. What if you're a moderate? What do you join? Where do you go? And I suddenly realized that part of the imbalance in the performance that we're seeing in terms of one side versus the other on the economy is one side has an identifiable movement, the other side doesn't. And this struck me as bizarre because progressives actually do a great job of building organizations. If you care about women, you can join NOW or Planned Parenthood. If you care about African Americans, you can join the NAACP or the Urban League. If you care about the environment, there's NRDC, the Sierra Club. If you care about jobs, if you care about the economy, if you care about the biggest issue in the country right now, probably for the next 10 to 20 years, and you're progressive, what do you join? So when I left Princeton, I reached out to folks at MoveOn.org and Planned Parenthood and Center for Community Change and about 70 organizations. And I made this basic point to them. I said, shouldn't there be something? Shouldn't there be something? And so we created something called rebuildthedream.com. And the idea is to create a positive counterbalance in America to the ideas of the Tea Party. We love our sisters and brothers who are in the Tea Party. We admire their patriotism. We're glad that they are enthusiastic about liberty. But what we know is that the Pledge of Allegiance doesn't stop with the word liberty. It's liberty and justice for all. And we haven't heard that for a very long time. And so we think we need a movement to stick up for that kind of patriotism as well.
Very good. That's the voice of Van Jones. As you know, Van, probably, I want listeners to get a feel for the people behind the idea and the work. So just a little bit, we've got an hour here, but just a little bit about your path, which some have heard before, but some haven't, from into the environment and then into this broader. You've kind of given us why you've gone broader, but that evolution in your own life that led you to be a green for all guy or a green collar jobs guy.
Well, yeah, I grew up on the edge of a small town in rural West Tennessee. I was born actually in 1968, which, as you know, is the year Bobby Kennedy was killed and
Martin
Dr. King was killed and the young people were beaten in Chicago trying to stand up for peace. It was really a year they tried to basically assassinate hope in America. And in kind of a biblical sense, it took 40 years in the wilderness between 68 and 2008 before hope really came back as a mass phenomenon. Well, I grew up in those 40 years. And when I graduated from Yale Law School, I moved to the Bay Area, and I've always been interested in alternative economics. And one of the things that occurred to me was we were spending so much money locking kids up here in California, $150,000 or more per year per kid. 90% of those kids wind up going to adult prison anyway. So the first thing I worked on, I said, well, why are we running a $150,000 a year prep school for adult prison? You can send 3 or 4 kids to Yale for the cost of sending 1 kid to jail. And we had this campaign called Books, Not Bars. And we worked with a lot of groups and wound up, as you know, cutting the California youth prison population by about 30%, closed 3 or 4 youth prisons, stopped them from building a super jail for kids in Oakland, and burned out. I was as crispy as a piece of cinder wood, and started trying to get my mental, emotional, physical health back together in the early 2000s, and discovered the green economy, yoga and meditation and solar panels and organic tofu and all this stuff, which wasn't the flavor of the month in Oakland. But I saw something there. And I felt like, there's some beautiful stuff happening in Oakland, California, a lot of soul, a lot of struggle. But there's also some beautiful stuff happening in other parts of California, like Marin County. So what if we brought these two worlds together? What if instead of just banging my head against the system all the time in opposition, what if we had a beautiful proposition? What if we said we want green jobs, not jails, for these young people? What if we train these young people to put up these solar panels and to grow this organic food and to retrofit their grandmother's home so grandma could save some money? What if we started doing some of the things that we know need to get done, connecting the young people who most need work to the work that most needs to get done in America, and fight pollution and poverty at the same time? So I became, as you know, an evangelist for this idea. I got lit up by it. I wrote a book about it. I went all over the country talking about it. No group was too little. I talked to a group of 4 people or 400, didn't care. And eventually a guy named John Edwards and a woman named Hillary Clinton and another woman named Nancy Pelosi and a guy named Barack Obama all heard what I was doing and got excited about it. All 3 of those presidential campaigns wound up using some of the ideas I had been putting forward. And I wound up getting invited to go to the White House. And I went there. I spent 6 months in the White House, best 6 months of my life, followed by the worst 2 weeks. Once all that stuff.
That was obviously the next question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
After all, the stuff from my radical, colorful youth came out, and I said, geez, the President of the United States could either spend a whole bunch of time trying to explain my colorful past, or I could resign and let him talk about America's future. No-brainer choice there.
Right.
Painful, but an important part of my journey. And I just basically spent the past 2 years, it's 2 years since I resigned, watching.
That's what I was going to ask about. Yeah. A little bit also personally in here.
Yes, sir.
About the first few weeks, the first few months.
Oh, it's terrible. Well, first of all, you never want to take on a big job as I did.
Which was, you were the green job czar.
Yeah, well, I was a special advisor.
I know.
We don't have any czars in America, but I was the special advisor to the president. I went to the White House and on an important issue, And you never want to take on a job like that and leave it undone. Nobody, even my critics, don't have any complaint about the job I did when I was there. It was all this sort of stuff from, some of it made up, some of it exaggerated from my past. But you never want to leave it undone. So if all I had done was leave it undone, that would have been terrible. I felt terrible. But then also to be kind of singled out to be a kind of a target as a part of a broader strategy to destabilize the president, that's a terrible feeling. And then you have to make a decision. Do you want to fight back, get your ego involved? This is not true. I'm going to sue you. Or do you want to take a step back and leave the president clear and clean to just go and do what he needs to do?
Right. So the spotlight that's been focused on you for a few days can return.
Exactly, can return. Well, the thing about it is, and this is what you don't think about in the moment. In the moment, when you're part of something like the White House, everything is about one person. It's about the president. If you're there, we're there to protect and serve the president. That's why you're there, not the other way around. So a lot of people say, well, why didn't the president do this? Why didn't the president do that? Look, the White House staff is not there for the president to protect and serve us. The staffers are there to protect and serve him. And it's all about one guy, trying to make sure the president and the administration can do well. So when the moment comes, and should I fall on my sword? It's kind of a no-brainer. Now, once you fall on your sword, you can't jump up and go, ow, 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 right? You got to lay down.
Right. You take the noble path.
Exactly. Yeah. But then, man, it's awful because, the world moves on. You don't know what you're going to do next. Everything you want to do is unfinished. And you also watch the team taking more hits. And now you're not there.
Right. That's what I would imagine is that what would I have said in that meeting?
So you go through all that. You just torture yourself. And then eventually you come to some peace. And, if you have one dream and it gets smashed, what do? Do you just lay down forever, or do you get back up with a bigger dream? And that's really what the country's got to deal with. That's what the progressive movement's got to deal with is, what happens when you have a big dream and it gets smashed? I think we're Americans and human beings. Somewhere deep down inside, that fire's still there. And you've got to give it some oxygen. Now, here's the difference between me now and me 2 years ago. The whole concept that I was focused on, which was green jobs as a solution, I'm still passionate about. But when you look at the math, if we did everything I could think to do, everything I proposed in my first book, The Green Collar Economy, which became a cornerstone for the administration, if Congress were to pass cap and trade, if we do all that stuff, you get about 3.1 million jobs. That's a lot of jobs. But we need 25 million.
Yeah.
And so to the extent that my journey is still, how do I make places like Oakland blossom? How do I make places like Watts and Appalachia blossom? I know green jobs are necessary but not sufficient. And so this next iteration, Rebuild the Dream, is fighting for jobs on the scale that we need them, and which includes green jobs. But green jobs is now just a part of the overall mission.
Makes very good sense. One of the things I heard was you started with a vision and a problem you aim to solve, and actually the conditions at the point at which you did it, green for all, was almost a big enough solution because we were in a bubble at the time. And so with your eye still on the same prize, conditions change.
Right. Well, part of what happens is if you look at where we were just a few years ago, you had a functioning economy, maybe based on bubbles we didn't quite understand, but the economy was functioning, and you had some places like California that had passed the right policies around greening up and cleaning up. And what was happening was you had the solar industry about to take off and moving forward. And you had homeowners who said, we love the solar, we want the solar, and they would have to wait 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to get the panels up. Not because they didn't have the money or because there wasn't an entrepreneur or a product. There were no trained workers to put the solar panels up. And I said, well, this might seem like sad news to you, but I've got some folks who need some jobs. So if we're going to create a labor shortage, guess what? I've got some young folks who'd love to have those jobs. And so what happened was that we could see a green pathway out of poverty for a set of young workers. And we were going for it. Then when everything collapsed, the economy had been built up on these credit cards, when it all collapsed, well, then you had, depending on how you do the math, 15 to 30 million Americans who a day before had been in the middle class. You turn around, they're now either falling out of the middle class down on top of my folks or barely hanging on by a thread. And you're going to have a very difficult time taking the people who are the traditionally poor and moving them up if you can't deal with the newly poor and the newly impoverished. And so my mission got bigger because my constituency got bigger. Poor folk got bigger.
That's right.
In America.
That's right.
And so you have to be, if you're serious about this stuff, and it's not just rhetorical, and you want to be able to say, look, listen, before and after, when I was working in the White House, that was my big refrain, that we want to be able, I said, look, when the president walks out here in 8 years, I don't want him to have to give a speech. He's one of the best communicators in the history of the English language. I don't want him to say a word. I want him to stand up with a PowerPoint and just click before, after. This kid before, this kid after. This neighborhood before, this neighborhood after. And that's it. Because everything else, is just gets lost in the information, churn. And so that's still my standard. I don't care how many good interviews I get to do or books I get to sell. If I can't walk back down the streets of Oakland year by year and see things getting better rather than worse, I'm not satisfied. And I don't think any of us should be. So that's basically where I come from. And that's the spirit I bring to this new effort, rebuildthedream.com. I think that we haven't heard yet from the best folks in the country, from many of the best folks in the country.
Right. Right.
And that's what we've got to be able to create an opportunity now for them to be heard from.
So, if you will, if there's anything more to share about the moments after the light bulb went on for you, mm-hmm. and before the launch, mm-hmm. How was it to try to put together? Because as I read an article or an interview you wrote recently, and you said too often progressives are competing for a grant, mm-hmm. or competing for their part in the new government program or something, rather than being a big tent. Or there's the other problem, which is that we end up competing issue against issue.
Yes.
Environment, women,
versus
gender, unions, you name it. How was it to do the spade work before you hold a big press conference?
Well, the amazing thing is when you aren't doing, from the time I was 24, I was running something, mainly my mouth, but I was running something. I was a project, a campaign, a new organization, a coalition, something. And when I left the White House, I went to Jerusalem for a while and just prayed and got my head together. And then I came back, I taught. I didn't have to run anything. And it's amazing what you see when you don't have those kinds of responsibilities. And one of the things that you see is exactly what you described, is that you can really lose the forest for the trees when you're just trying to kind of keep all these not-for-profit organizations and elected officials together. But the other thing I did, I decided to study the Tea Party. Right. See, I a lot of times people, I would never study them. Well, hold on a second. Know your foe.
Well, in some sense, if I may,
yeah.
I think they studied progressives.
Exactly.
So you might as well
study
them.
That you're exactly right. That is exactly what I discovered. They after they got walloped in the 2006 and then 2008, they sat down. They studied MoveOn.org. They studied the Obama campaign. They studied the civil rights movement. And they came to some conclusions about mistakes they made, and they came forward with a set of innovations, which we call the Tea Party. But in studying them, what you find out is there is no Tea Party.
Right.
There is no Tea Party. You can't get on a plane, go to Washington, D.C., get in a cab, say, take me to Tea Party headquarters. Go to the headquarters building, get yourself buzzed in, talk to the receptionist, steal a mint, and ask to talk to the Tea Party president. Because there is no headquarters. There is no buzzer. There is no receptionist. There is no mint. There is no president. There is no Tea Party. It is a meta brand. It's a brand that 3,528 affiliates use. Nobody owns.
But by the way, I'm sure many listeners of this program did not realize that.
Well,
that 3,500.
Well, sure. Well, but here's the thing about it. That 3,528 are affiliated under Tea Party Patriots. There's also Tea Party Express and Tea Party Nation. But the main one people hear about is Patriots. Here's the deal. Most of those groups pre-existed the Tea Party. Some of them going back to the Ross Perot days, back to 1992. Some of these groups. These are not new groups. These are not new organizations. These are not new ideas. These are old assets and old ideas repackaged, rebranded, and represented to the American people as something new. Here's the other brilliant thing they did, because they're no different than we are. They have their little fights.
Right.
They have
sure.
their little. But here's what they did. They said, listen, don't change your name. You're Iowans for Common Sense Tax Policy or whatever you are, little libertarian group with 7 members. Don't change your name. Don't change your website. Don't change anything. Take your name and put a comma behind it and put Tea Party affiliate. That's all. And then come to no meetings. There's no coalition meetings. Just do that. And then when we act, the whole country thinks that we're one massive force, when in fact we're the same 3,000 groups we were before.
Now, I got to ask you one question, which is, who is the they?
Well,
that's
sure,
saying to them,
sure.
just put this on your website.
There are groups that are funded by our friends, the Koch brothers, not Coca-Cola, but the Koch brothers, people who have a lot of money based on oil and gas, and they fund organizations that work as support centers for this movement. The Tea Party movement is a swarm. It's not a coalition. It's not an organization. It is a swarm of little organizations supported by Freedom Works, which is led by Dick Armey, supported by Americans for Prosperity, supported by Liberty Labs. All of these groups are funded by the Koch brothers. But these support centers, rather than fighting each other, said, let's support one massive thing called the Tea Party. And by doing that, they took all their existing assets and amplified them. But guess what? Nobody owns a Tea Party.
Right.
You can't copyright Tea Party. I can't trademark
Right.
Tea Party. And yet, the media reports on it as if it's a force, as a single force. And so I said to myself, well, hold on a second. Once I put it together, the horror that came over me is as follows. There is a hypocrisy here on both sides, the right and the left, to our detriment. Here's the hypocrisy. The right wing, the libertarians, talk about rugged individualism. That's their whole shtick. But they've just enacted the most collectivist strategy for taking power in the history of the Republic. 3,528 groups, nobody owns it, they're all sharing it. Their agenda, their policy agenda, no one person wrote it. 50,000 people crowdsourced it together as a wiki. It's called the contract. I want
to hear just a little bit more about that, because that was news to me as well. One thing I noticed was it seems that wherever all the identification when you got to the grassroots of the right had been with evangelical Christians, and it seems like maybe in a sense that had its day, that this idea of having a new grassroots organization that no longer has that brand seems brilliant. I just want to put that one out there. But talk about this thing of how they came up with that contract, because it's so 21st century.
Well, they basically, I think Liberty Labs played a big role. I know Freedom Works did as well. They said, look, here's the deal. Dick Armey could write a contract, or they could go, dust off whatever Newt Gingrich did a long time ago, or whatever. But then we're going to fight over the authorship. So they created a wiki, and they called it the Contract from America, ripping off of the 1990s contract with America. We call it Contract on America.
Right.
And 50,000 people got together online, and they created this document. You look at the document, a lot of it's just kind of standard talking points. Some of it's interesting, but the reality is you got 50,000 people that all have ownership.
A sense of ownership.
A sense of ownership. So now now look at you. Now it's starting to get scary, because you say to yourself, hold on. They say they're about rugged individualism. They have an open source brand that they all are sharing, an open source meta brand they're all sharing together, and they've crowdsourced their agenda, and they cooperate in the media. But then look at us. We say we're about solidarity forever. We say we're about let's all work together. We say we're about let's be cooperative. Let's have one world. Kumbaya. But we have enacted the most individualistic approach to politics you can find. Every city has 13 different coalitions with 80% overlap, all different names. You can't identify any particular individual brand that floats to the top, certainly on the economy and jobs. Hold on a second. You mean if we were as warm and fuzzy and sharing as the Tea Party,
yeah,
we might get somewhere? In other words, they're beating us on our own values.
Yeah.
We talk the cooperative talk, but we enact individualism. They talk individualism, they enact the cooperative. And so what I said, my light bulb moment was, well, hold on a second. This might be easier than I thought. We've got more than 3,528 organizations in the United States. We probably had more than that in L.A. County. I mean,
too true.
We ain't lacking for organizations. Obama had a patriotic narrative about unifying the country, e pluribus unum. We're no red states, no blue states. We're the United States. People still get goosebumps. They still get goosebumps remembering the goosebumps they got when they first heard him say that, because that's the power of that kind of patriotism.
Yep.
And the Tea Party comes back, they got their patriotic narrative, which is liberty, liberty, liberty. No justice for anybody, but liberty, liberty, which we like part of it, but we think it's more. But hold on a second. So hold on now. Let me get this straight. When we were strong, we had a patriotic narrative and a big grassroots movement. They're strong. Now the other side, they've got a patriotic narrative, big grassroots movement. Well, hold on a second. We've got a big grassroots movement. Our folks are fighting every day. They're just fighting individually. And the patriotic value that's at stake now is one of the most fundamental, which is the American dream itself. Now, not the crazy commercialized, everybody's going to get rich someday and buying a bunch of stuff will make you happy. Go get a flat screen TV and that'll cover up all the holes in your life. That's the American fantasy, which has turned into an American nightmare. But the American dream, which is what Dr. King was talking about, the first thing out of Dr. King's mouth, I have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream.
Yeah.
Now, he was not talking about commercialism and consumerism. He was talking about living in a country where everybody counts, where everybody matters, where you shouldn't have to be rich or have a certain kind of ethnic background or have a fancy last name to be able to work hard, get somewhere, give your kids a better life. That fundamental sense of equality, that fundamental sense of opportunity, that fundamental sense that we're that kind of country, that is being killed off. The American dream is being killed off by these folks on Wall Street and with this front group of right-wingers who basically say they'd rather see the dreams of millions of people killed so rich folk don't have to pay their taxes. That's not American. That is not who we are. These people want to repeal the 20th century, which is also known as the American century. So I said, well, hold on a second. What if we had a movement just to defend the American dream? And what if we took the groups that are already fighting for it anyway, but instead of saying, well, I'm fighting against foreclosures and I'm fighting for the veterans and I'm fighting against tuition hikes and I'm fighting, for jobs for folks in Appalachia, or I'm fighting, well, aren't we all fighting for the American dream? What if we ourselves had a patriotic narrative that we were standing together on? And what if we had a common brand? Well, if you say you're a part of the American dream movement, I don't own that. You don't own that. Is that something? Now, some people say, well, I'm skeptical about that. It sounds a little bit too much like jingoistic or whatever. We can have those debates and those arguments, but I think if you want to talk about the country as a whole, you can go in any red state in America, walk in any sports bar, church, mosque, synagogue, laundromat, bowling alley, and say, I'm here because the people are trying to kill the American dream, and I want to defend it. You guys need to stand with me, and you'll get a hearing. And I think that's really where I want to see us begin to go.
What role did the attacks and the responses in Wisconsin play in this? Because the overlap here is pretty clear. Look at me a little bit.
Yeah, good. Well, first of all, it was really Wisconsin that kind of lit me up.
Okay.
Because what I realized was everybody's looking in the wrong place for the answers. I said, hold on a second. Everybody's sitting here waiting for Washington, D.C. to do something. And I hear a lot of criticism now of the president. Listen, whether you love the president or hate the president, God bless you. But what are we going to do becomes the question. And suddenly people are starting to do something.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, now this looks kind of like the kind of movement that can make a difference. And I started doing a little bit more research. And one of the things I came to realize, we might have had the wrong theory of the presidency at the beginning of the Obama administration. Not the wrong theory of the president. I'll stand up for the president, any day of the week. But the wrong theory of the presidency itself. I think we thought we had elected a Dr. King inspirational movement leader type figure who, once he got into the White House, was going to lead a movement, and we were going to follow him as a movement leader.
That while in some sense the election campaign did become a movement,
yes,
that he would then take that movement with him, and we would have a movement presidency.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing about that is, it is very hard to find an example of how that is an American model for the presidency. Now, there are movement leaders who become heads of state. Some you may like, some you may not like. Fidel Castro,
a lot
Hugo
in Latin
Chavez.
America lately.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there is a model. If you like that model, if you don't like that model, what you can say about it is that's not an American model. The U.S. model is you have an LBJ. He's not leading the civil rights movement. The head of state function and the movement leader function are traditionally separate. And so LBJ wasn't out there leading the civil rights movement. Dr. King wasn't sitting around saying, I sure hope LBJ gives a good speech today. Like that, as we sit around hoping Obama gives a good speech today. Those are different functions. FDR didn't get out there and lead the CIO on the strikes. The labor movement pushed for the New Deal, and there was an interaction there. Abraham Lincoln didn't lead the abolitionists. That was Frederick Douglass and a bunch of other folks. Frederick Douglass didn't sit around. I hope Abraham Lincoln gives a great speech today. He was giving his own speeches and doing his own stuff. And on the other side of the aisle, Nixon did not lead the environmental movement, but he signed the EPA, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, because there was a movement out there that was insisting that happen. What I began to realize was there's a need to rebuild this sense of an independent movement that isn't, we're not building a movement to chase the White House, but building a movement the White House would have to chase.
And we go back to the words of FDR,
yes.
Right? FDR probably the one that people most think kind of did lead a movement because the New Deal has FDR's fingerprints all over. But he said to the people when he had a meeting, I believe it was with labor leaders, or maybe it was some of the farmers who were setting up shanty tent towns in D.C. And he said, "Okay, I've heard what you want. Now make me do it."
Right. Well, I think that is something that a lot of people said quite a bit when Obama was elected, but we didn't walk that talk.
Right.
Most of the people, including myself, rather than staying outside of the orbit of the White House and building an independent movement, I actually physically, I'm the best example. I physically went and worked in the White House, and other people acted as if they were doing that.
Right.
And I don't think it served us very well.
Right. And Wisconsin.
But Wisconsin broke the mold.
Yeah.
Because not only were they not waiting for the president, they said they didn't want any of the outside they wanted to do it themselves. They wanted to be local voices, locally run movement. Support, but we're going to lead this, which I thought was great. And to your point about farming, they had farmers, they had students, they had workers, even the union members who were not under the gun stood up.
Right.
I said, this is the kind of movement that can make a difference. But what's it called? What's the name of it? If there's no brand, how can it spread? And so I said, back on Huffington Post, I said we should call this the American Dream movement because these are the people who are defending the American dream. And then MoveOn.org picked that up and put it out there. They said, well, let's see if anybody likes that. And in about 3 days, we had 50 demonstrations at 50 state capitals with 50,000 people on 3 days' notice, 50,000 people total on 3 days' notice. And we said, you know what, we think there's something out there.
So in other words, this is while the stuff is going on in Wisconsin.
In the middle of Wisconsin.
You then, people showed up in other state capitals
yes.
saying, we're here
in
to
solidarity.
defend
exactly.
the American dream.
Right. And people were, we didn't tell them, call this the American dream thing. But we put that rhetoric in the thing. And people showed up with signs, save the American dream, defend the American dream, bring back the American dream. We said there's some mourning that is happening about this promise that we were made as kids, that we call the American dream, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to get somewhere. You should be able to give your kids a better life. you should be able to retire with some dignity. And what people are seeing is the people who are working hardest falling further behind, and the people who obey the rules and play by the rules falling further behind, and the people who break the rules and who are so incredibly lazy that they put their feet up on the desk on Wall Street now, and their computer does 1,000 trades a second for them, right?
And their computer signs those mortgage
exactly.
documents.
And who has a job like that where you sit there and your computer does all the work for you? But guess what? They don't fail. Our folks don't succeed. Those folks don't fail. They're too big to fail. That is what is driving people crazy in this country, is that these people, there's a small group, they've been declared too big to fail. Well, what about our communities? When are our communities too big to fail? Yeah? When are these neighborhoods too big to fail?
Yeah.
When is this generation of young kids too big to fail? That's over there in Afghanistan and Iraq. As long as they're over there, and Halliburton can get a cut, you'll spend any amount of money on them. But then you dump them off at the airport, and you send them back over here into an economic battlefield with no support from anybody, and that's supposed to be all right. Or their cousins graduate off of a cliff every summer into the worst economy since the Great Depression. These kids go to school, they go to these programs, they go to college, and then they're looking at their mom's couch. That's their reward. And if they can get a 2-year unpaid internship, that's supposed to be all right in America. Now that is what is driving people nuts.
And as money gets cut off in the States, their tuitions at the public schools go up and up and up. So they graduate, if they do, with enormous debt.
They work hard to fall further behind. That's what we're telling kids. We're telling kids, go to college, take on all this debt, and when you get out, you can have a 2-year unpaid internship and sleep on your mom's couch. That is wrong in America. And so, but where's the outrage? We'll sit here and complain about Obama and talk about him 24 hours a day. It's kind of like getting a lobotomy. I call it people have gotten not lobotomized. Yeah, exactly. Lobotomized, Obama-tized. And again, whether you love him or you hate him, all you're doing is sitting around complaining about what he should do. Well, hold on a second. I worked in Washington, D.C. for 6 months. I lived out there for more than 2 years. Washington, D.C. is never going to be any better than the American people. It's never going to be any braver than the American people. It's never going to be more courageous or audacious than the American people. If you want Obama to be courageous, what are you doing today as courageous? If you want Obama to take a stand for these kids, what are you doing today that's going to make a difference for these kids? We've got to go back and own the fact this is our country. And America is what we say it is, not what the right wing says it is. See, part of the reason we surrender patriotism and we surrender patriotic language because we actually buy into the right wing's nonsense that America is just this, racist, narrow thing. In other words, the right wing, when the right wing declares what America is, they say, we believe in the real Americans. They're leaving out the black folks. They're leaving out the lesbians. They're leaving out so many people, but then we act like they're right. And then we don't grab that flag back from them.
Right. And we say, wait, that ain't me. Exactly. But we don't say, this is.
Exactly. What we should say is a patriot is somebody who loves the country and everybody in it. And if you love the country but only love the people who pray like you and look like you, you're a whole lot, but you're not a patriot. You're at best, you're a cheap patriot.
Yeah.
We're the deep patriots because we believe in liberty and justice for all. We love the country and everybody in it. When my kid sings a song, America the Beautiful, I can hold my head up when he's singing it because I'm out here trying to defend that beauty, like most progressives, from the clear cutters, from the oil spillers, from the mountaintop removers. The progressives are the ones who are defending America's beauty against the people who want to destroy it for money. The progressives are the ones who are standing up for the Statue of Liberty and saying, give me your tired, give me your poor, and in solidarity with the next round of immigrants who will make America better. Those are progressive values. Progressives won the last century. 1900, every cause we care about is in a garbage can. By 2000, you've got a middle class. You've got equal rights, at least to fight for. You've got environmental movement. Kids aren't working in sweatshops. You've got a weekend. You've got federal holidays. None of that existed in 1900. And it was the progressive patriots that said, hey, look, we'll never be perfect, but we can be a more perfect union than this, and fought every day for 100 years. So from 1900 to 2000, look at what we achieved. And that achievement, the progressive achievement, is known as the American century. That's what they want to repeal. Now, how are they the patriots?
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? So there's a way that we have to take responsibility now. Don't blame the Tea Party. Don't blame the president. We're bigger than the Tea Party. If you count the noses, for all the stuff the Tea Party and Fox TV has done, where are they in the polls? 70% of Americans agree with you. Raise taxes on rich people. Warren Buffett is right. It's time for them, the people who got the benefits of the tax breaks and the bailouts, let them pay America back now. That's 80-90% of Americans agree with you on that.
Right.
They agree with you. Jobs are more important. As phony deficit. Everything that we believe. We're not a minority. We're not the margin.
And cut defense.
And cut defense. People are ready to end these wars responsibly, bring the money and the troops home. $3 billion a week overseas. What if you had $3 billion here in L.A. to make a difference for these young people? So we're not a tiny little minority that should be trembling from the Tea Party and mad at the president. We are the majority, but we don't act like it. And so the opportunity now, rebuildthedream.com, the American Dream movement, is just to bring everybody back together, get back around that campfire from 2008. Didn't it feel good 2008?
You don't know how many times on this show, when you said the thing about we get chills remembering the chills we had, where I asked someone that night, how did you feel that night? Yeah. And how does it feel now a year later? How does it feel now 2 years later, etc.? What has happened since then, and what's the plan?
Well, first of all, it's been an amazing response, especially considering the mainstream media blacks out our stuff all the time. So we have to just accept that we have to do things the old-fashioned way, build the movement, and then have the media cover it. The right wing does it the other way. They have the media create the movement, and then people join it. So we have to build ours the old-fashioned way. But let me say two things, one about leadership and one about what's happened. Here's the other thing that I studied with the Tea Party movement. They make very smart use of charisma. We have this crazy adolescent relationship with charisma. We either will follow somebody off a cliff just because they're charismatic, or we hate anybody that shows any leadership. It's just very adolescent. They say, no. They have charismatic leaders, but they use them very well. Sarah Palin used to be the queen of the Tea Party. She fell down the stairway of public opinion. Nobody cares about Sarah Palin. Tea Party strong as ever. Glenn Beck used to be the big guy. He didn't have a TV show anymore. But the Tea Party, strong as ever. Why? Because they have leaders, but their charisma is second to the charisma of the network. The Tea Party is the main show. Everybody else is just an actor. So Dick Armey, Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann, all those people. So that is a very, very smart adaptation. And so what we want to do is to build something where, Van Jones could fall down the stairway of public opinion tomorrow, but it wouldn't matter because you have so many other leaders from labor, from lesbian and gay, from Appalachia, farmers, so many other leaders that the charismatic network based on principles and values, not personalities, not politicians, not political parties, but principles and values can prevail. That's what we haven't done. And until we achieve that, a movement about the economy and jobs and opportunity that's based on principles and values, not based on personalities and politicians and parties, we're always going to get beat up by a Tea Party. So where that leads me is, so we said, well, how do we do that? So we said, listen, let's just call for it. June we announced, and we said we want to crowdsource our own agenda. The other side, they crowdsourced theirs. We want to crowdsource ours. When they launched theirs, they had 800, the Tea Party, 800 House meetings across America. Everybody went crazy. Oh, my God, it's a movement. We didn't have 800. We had 1,597, almost twice the number. When they crowdsourced their agenda, they had 50,000 people. We didn't have 50,000. We had 131,000, almost 3 times as many. No Fox TV pushing it, no Koch brothers funding it, just grassroots netroots organizing. And we produced a document. You can find it at rebuildthedream.com called The Contract for the American Dream. And it turns out, we went through that process. It turns out everything we came up with polls 60 to 70%. Because it's just the common sense stuff Americans believe in: defend Social Security, invest in green jobs, end these wars, tax rich people, tax Wall Street. It's what Americans believe. So our thing pulls off the charts. We already have more Facebook likes on ours in 6 weeks than the Tea Party has on theirs after 2 years. The thing is going. So then we said, well, that's interesting. It turns out that Oh, we also had 70-plus organizations to sign up.
Right. When you go to the bottom and
scroll and scroll.
If you go to, well, first of all, go to rebuildthedream.com. But when you scroll down and you'll say, these are the organizations we're affiliated with, normally you see 5, 10, so it just keeps going down, which was one of the cooler things.
Well, I tell you what, it was cool to see. Billy Wimsatt, who founded the League of Young Voters, gets the credit for that. He's such an energizer bunny. He just went around and got all these groups to sign up. And, some have really leaned in, worked hard. Yeah. Others just gave their name. But the reality is that it creates an opportunity for people to lean into something. So we then spent the month of August supporting the grassroots groups, all those people that were the media loves to report on this stuff in strange ways. But you did get the sense there's a rumbling out there in the country of Congress people trying to go to town hall meetings and progressives standing up and saying, what the heck were you doing with this debt debacle? Well, that was in large part the American Dream movement infrastructure that we built up, supporting that to happen. Now, if the media would just go ahead and call it all one thing, everybody would feel a lot better about the country. Here's the thing. What's next? Because I know we don't have a whole lot of time. In October, 3rd through the 5th, we're having a summit called the Take Back the American Dream Summit. Campaign for America's Future is leading off on it. Bob Borsaj and those great folks. Democracy for America, Howard Dean's former organization, is running a campaign called Don't Kill the Dream. We have legislation already introduced in Congress by Jan Schakowsky called Bring Back the American Dream Act that would have 2 million Americans employed tomorrow doing things that, directly by the federal government. Forget trying to bank shot it off of everything else. Just like FDR just hired the people and put them to work. There is stuff happening now around this idea of the American dream. And there's a summit, there's legislation. There's
and let me just tell people,
campaigns.
If you want to learn more about the summit, one, you can go to rebuildthedream.com or ourfuture.org.
Exactly.
And get the details on where it's happening, when it's happening, and what it's going to be.
And so I think, now, you never know how these things work out ultimately. But what we are seeing now is the kind of innovation and determination coming together. It's not just me. I got a big mouth, but it's a lot of leaders, layers of leaders now coming together with the kind of innovation and determination to turn this thing around that we saw after the 2004 defeat when George Bush snuck past John Kerry. We didn't lay down. People started innovating. The Huffington Post was born right after that. Color of Change was born.
I went to the Next Gig that the SEIU put on.
Right.
What a collection of young, some of the people you're talking about now were in that room that day. It was exciting.
And those people helped take back the Congress 2006, helped elect Obama 2008, and can be re-energized for 2012. But I'm not just focused on elections.
I was going to ask you, actually, how you see this nascent movement. Here we are in September 2011, an election in November 2012, so about a little more than a year, how they dance with each other.
You cross that bridge when you come to it. For most ordinary people, they're not going to pay any attention to the election, probably at least until the spring, once the Republicans settle on a nominee. In the meantime, people are losing their jobs. People's houses are underwater, and the banks won't even help them. The banks that American taxpayers saved will not even return the phone calls of American taxpayers when they say, can you help me on my mortgage? Can you cut me a better deal? That's wrong. So people have bread and butter, kitchen table, grits and gravy issues right now today we need to be fighting for. And we're going to focus on that. We're going to focus on sticking up for the middle class and the people who want to be in the middle class and sticking up for poor folks and making sure that D.C. doesn't do more damage and that we start coming together. And we hope that changes the dynamic for both parties. The Tea Party didn't worry about elections at first. They just said, this is right, this is wrong. This is what we believe, we don't care. Find us, we're mad at this guy. And it changed the whole dynamic. So what we're saying is it's time for us to do the same thing. Principles and values have to be articulated or they die. If nobody stands up and says, this is a country where everybody counts, everybody matters, everybody should have a shot at their dreams, and not only that, as your individual thing, climb the ladder. We're a country to make sure you got a ladder to climb, buddy. That's who we are, and we're not going to have the ladder kicked over by folks who just want the people in Wall Street to run roughshod over the country. If nobody articulates those values, they die. And so we're going to articulate those values. We hope it changes the behavior of both political parties. We're not aligned with the Democrats. We're not aligned with the Republicans. We're aligned with the American people.
Interesting. Now, when you come together, when these folks come together in October, and when things go on from here, one of the things that I've noticed in terms of so many things is that the actual innovations, the actual good ideas usually come by states or by communities.
Yeah.
And then they go up and fight with Wall Street when they get to Washington, and maybe they get past that cliff or past Wall Street in the filibuster. Maybe they get past that or not. How are you working in terms of those kinds of reforms?
I believe that President Obama was right when he was Senator Obama and he said change doesn't come from Washington, it comes to Washington. I think he proved that, and the Tea Party proved that, and I think it's time for us to prove that again. And so my view on this is there are great ideas even below the city level, like you said, the community level. What I'm loving is what I'm calling American Dream 2.0, where a lot of people are using, they're using Kiva, Kickstarter. They're going online. They're creating a shareable version of the American Dream to make up for the fact that the formal economy is too little
and our
dreams are too big.
Quickly there, Ben, because one of the things that I, as I said, I've been doing a few shows here on the American Dream. One of the things I know is I have a lot of friends who are young social entrepreneurs who think government is corrupt, government is a con, and I'm not going to waste my energy. I've only got so much. I'm going to do it through things like Kiva, through Kickstarter, that sort of thing. How did they dance with Rebuild the American Dream?
Well, that's we think that we need disruptive innovation, people-powered, technology-enabled, disruptive innovation in the economy as well as in politics. And so in the economy, that's bottom-up, people-powered innovation would be, or disruptive innovation would be, things like Kickstarter and Kiva, where people can go online and share things and help each other and do peer-to-peer lending. And hey, if the banks won't help us, we're going to help ourselves. That's an important part. But I will not let anybody off the hook. Just because you might have access to a computer and you can figure out some way to fund your own dreams, there are millions of people in America and around the world who deserve to have America's government as a partner to them moving forward agendas. We can't move forward even as networks of collectives. We have to have America's government as a partner to solve the big problems of the new century, and I will not let anybody off the hook on that. At the same time, I think it's wrong to tell people nothing good can happen until D.C. moves. That's also not fair. So we have to say both innovation, people-powered innovation, bottom up to fix the economy as best we can, but also people-powered innovation to fix politics.
Because
and
otherwise,
both of those have to happen.
Otherwise, all your social entrepreneurial efforts will be happening on the margin
while
Wall Street goes, let them play.
Exactly. Well, the thing is, you'll be running faster and faster on a conveyor belt that's going the other direction faster and faster, and so you might have some anecdotal successes, but you'll be looking at the communities getting worse and worse.
Yeah, as I call it, the juggernaut just doesn't sleep.
But here's the thing about it is everybody goes, we suck so bad and nothing we can do. I'm a historian. I can remember all the way back to 2008, right? I can remember all the way back to 2008. People just like us, me, you, the people in this room, people who are listening, we beat George Bush, we beat Karl Rove, we made history. And we can do it again. We will do it again. These are the moments where we get a chance to reset. The American Dream has to be reset and rebooted. But first, the progressive movement has to go through a reset and a reboot. And once we do that, the fact that we're the majority of America now will matter a ton in the economy and in politics.
Very good. That's Van Jones. He's co-founder and president of Rebuild the Dream. You can learn more at rebuildthedream.com. You can listen to this week's conversation and many others anytime during the week by linking to the podcast. You can sign up to have it delivered to you weekly at my website or at iTunes. My website is terrencemcnally.net, one word, terrencemcnally.net, or aworldthatjustmightwork.com, same website. You can also sign up at my site or by emailing me at temcnally@mac.com to get my weekly announcement by email. It tells you who's going to be on, what we're going to talk about, and gives you some background on the issues. There we are. Van Jones, keep up the good work.
Thank you. Rebuildthedream.com.